Hi, welcome to my channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I'm going to talk about the sabotage of the Nord Stream and basically a review and an expansion on the subject. I've made a couple of videos on that, but more and more information came out, and the most prominent news media or story that came out was a story by Seymour Hersh. And subsequently, there was another story that came out about a yacht that was operated by some 6 Ukrainians. And according to the West, those are the people that were supposed to blow up the pipeline. So today, I'm going to talk about, firstly, about the Seymour Hersh one. And if the video is not that long, then I will handle the yacht as well. But I will probably have to split this up into 2 parts. So if you are interested, please continue watching. Hi, welcome back. The first time I read the Hersh article, I thought to myself, this sounds too good to be true. The way that it was written was like a typical spy novel. In my age, it was Alistair MacLean. A more modern writer would be Tom Clancy. And it read like a story out of a novel. And okay, I was told that Seymour Hersh was a well-renowned reporter, investigative reporter, and that he has been awarded the Pulitzer Prize for many of his stories. But he's fairly old, so he comes from the old school. And I was told that he had a number of contacts throughout his career that he built up in the US government. And based on that, a lot of credibility was given to this article. Now, if I listen to most of the pro-Russian commentators, they supported Seymour Hersh's narrative. And even Peter Lavelle from the Crosstalk talked much about that. And most of the guests basically supported this narrative. So it would be a little bit, one has to be very cautious in order to now go against this narrative, because this is supposed to be a credible account of who done it and who has basically blown up the Nord Stream pipeline. So the core of this article, or the score of this narrative, depends on 2 main items of the credibility of this report. The first is the credibility of Seymour Hersh himself and his long-standing successful career. And the second one is that basically both Biden and Newland has stated in the news conference that America will not allow Nord Stream 2 pipeline to become functional, and that America has the means of preventing that it will become. They never actually said that they're going to blow it up. So one has to make a little bit of a distinction here. But we all know Joe Biden. He says a lot of things which he's not supposed to say and what he's not supposed to mean. And if any sane people would say, hey, I'm not going to blow up my friend's pipeline. But Joe Biden has a reputation for that. And Newland has also a reputation, like the EU phone call intercept that we had in 2014. So both of these are quite some characters, and one has to be very careful to put any weight behind what they say and what they do. So in any case, I've decided to reread the article, and today I'm going to go through the article and discuss some of the some of the items, because it doesn't really make sense. I'm not going to do the whole paper, but if you read, I will leave a link to the paper and then you can read it yourself. I wouldn't say, okay, say 40% of the information that was written is not really relevant to their, call it expose. It is more background information and it gives you a nice narrative, but it has nothing to do with the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline. Who done it? So, with further ado, let's have a look at the article. Now, this is the article that was published by Seymour Hersh on his Substack website or blog, if you want to call it. And that it was published on the 8th of February. And we have a nice photo on that. And then we can talk about what the story is about. Now, firstly, it talks about that the US Navy Diving and Salvage Center was a training ground for some of the divers that were responsible for the placement of the explosives. And it gives us a little bit of background into what the center is, the Panama Center, and what they will do, and etc., etc. But this should have been sort of common knowledge. It's not that this is something significantly of an expose. I could have just said, oh, well, okay, I don't know, but let's say there was a diving school in Miami. I could have used that one as well, because there's no real proof that the divers from this specific school did plant the explosives, but it's highly likely that they would have done it, because this is the top school, top Navy diving school in the American Army or Navy. And he gives us a little bit of a summary and a background and says that basically the explosives were placed under cover of the NATO exercise called the Baltop 22. And that was used as a cover to place the explosives. And so nobody can really pinpoint when it was placed and how it was placed and by whom it was placed. Because an operation of this nature is critical that it has to be a clandestine or overt operation. At the end of the day, if anything points back to the Americans, then the finger can be pointed. They cannot claim deniability, and that would be a huge impact on the credibility or image of the American government. So if Germany will ever find out that the Americans blew it up, then surely that would sour some of their relationships. But the problem is that this was not a clandestine or overt operation. If it was used, if the Baltops 22 exercise was used as a cover, and if they used some of the ships that were taking part in this exercise, because at the end of the day, you have the CIA agents that will control it, and then you will have the diving team, and those are the people that should be, well, apart from Biden and his nearby confidants, those are the people, the only people that should know about it, and nobody else. But if you do it in part of the exercise, then other sailors on these boats will notice these strange type of divers and what they were doing. And even if they didn't know what they did at that time, later when explosives took place, they could have put 1 + 1 and gotten 2. And then basically go to the newspaper or leak the information, and well, that's it. No more clandestine covert operation. So it was essential that this operation had to be very, very clandestine. Now, there was an article, well, not an article, it was a YouTube by John Mark Dugan, who apparently received a letter or email from a whistleblower. And this whistleblower apparently worked on one of these ships, and he was part of the diving setup, personnel, administration, the guys that actually controlled the diving operations on this exercise, and on this exercise there was some mine clearing, mine finding type of training exercises. So he was part of that. So he also provided a photo, but because it looks like he was not an American, he was from some other country, it could have been Sweden or Denmark. But it seems to me his country doesn't have that much money to spend on fancy diving equipment, so it could be Norway or it could be Denmark or some. In any case, it seems to me that John Dugan believed his credibility, and if you read the comments, he read the whole letter, and if you read some of the comments in this video, it seems to me that the viewers also found the letter credible. Now, John also forwarded to, I think it was Thomas Roper, Thomas Roper, who's a German guy living in St. Petersburg, and he translated into German, and then he published it himself. And Thomas is a very conservative person, so if he doesn't believe something or finds it credible, he won't publish it. So just for him to publish it lends some credibility to this whistleblower's email. And this guy actually observed the arrival of the divers per helicopter and the CIA agents, and he describes the divers as not your standard military guys. Guys had beards and were looking like typical RAF specialists and so on. And he watched their gear. They didn't have the necessary gear for mine clearing, but they had different gears, and he recognized the advanced diving suit. I think it's a MK93. And because he was a diving specialist, he knew what it was and how it looked like. And he also knew that it was highly secret and highly advanced. And information about this diving equipment was very, very scarce. And it was an American unit. And then he also observed that they actually climbed into an inflatable or another ship. He didn't say inflatable, but I would presume it's a small ship, inflatable, or a hard body type of aluminium type of boat that these ships use, and traveled in the wrong direction. They didn't go in the direction where they were supposed to clear the mines. Now, in his email, he actually unfortunately states that these guys were diving 6 hours. Now, how he didn't know that they were diving 6 hours, I don't know, because he only noticed when they left and when they returned. But in any case, he said that these suits, there's no commercial available suit that can dive for 6 hours alone. The longest, I believe, is like 4 hours. And this is the main information that he more or less gave. The divers came back and they climbed on the helicopters, and some of the gears they had with him were not with him at that stage. So that was gone. So they were missing some from which they departed was what from they came. But in any case, as you can see, the US whistleblower, and the whole cover for this whole story is blown. So coming back to Seymour Hersh article, according to him, President Joe Biden saw the pipeline as a vehicle for Vladimir Putin to weaponize natural gas for his political and territorial ambitions. I'm sorry to say, that is bullshit. There were never any signs that Putin would do this. And why Biden would think that that would be a vehicle for Vladimir Putin to weaponize, well, at the end of the day is that the Western nations and Germany itself weaponized themselves by implementing sanctions. So instead of Putin threatening them and weaponizing gas, the Germans decided, no, I don't want your gas, so they weaponized, and they shot themselves on behalf of Putin in the foot. Well, not in the foot, in the upper leg, if you want to call it. And carefully not going too much to the middle. So this story doesn't make sense. Then there's a little bit more about some stuff that he talks about. And anyway, Biden's decision to sabotage the pipelines, okay, they discussed it for about 9 months, but for much of that time, the issue was not whether to do the mission, but how to get it done with no overt clue as to who was responsible. You can see here again, nobody must find out who has done it. And it is critical if one looks at the implication. And according to him, or according to Hersh, it was vital bureaucratic reasons relying on the graduates of the center was that they were Navy only and not members of American Special Operations Command, whose covert operations must be reported to Congress. So these guys can do, if they use the Navy guys, the divers, they can use this exercise or do this operation without telling the Senate and the House leadership. And again, it's a question of not secrecy. No leaks. Nobody should know about this. In any case, so these plannings were all done in late 2021 and in the first months of 2022. Now, you can go on and read nicely about this, how the Biden and whatever. And again, so they promised that the action they didn't want the action to be traced to the administration because it would violate U.S. promises to minimize direct conflict with Russia. The secrecy was essential. So here we have it again. Secrecy. But it doesn't sound like that. And then he goes on about Biden's action and how Washington saw it. And he saw that Gazprom, a publicly traded Russian company producing enormous profits for shareholders, which is dominated by oligarchs known to be in the thrall of Putin. No, that's also not correct. More than 50% of Gazprom is owned by the Russian government. So they are the biggest shareholder, not the oligarchs that are near to Putin. And here we can go on and irrelevant stuff. It goes really to this. Position inflated, nothing really important. And you see how many paragraphs and sentences are actually wasted on non-important things. And a few months later, as the construction of the second pipeline neared completion, Biden blinked. So in May, in a stunning turnaround, the administration waived sanctions against Nord Stream. At that stage, they have placed against companies that were manufacturing or laying the piping for the Nord Stream 2. So those were sanctioned, and then suddenly Biden made a turnaround on his decision and lifted the sanctions. And said that they conceded that they're trying to stop the pipeline through sanctioned diplomacy had always been a long shot, so they never had much faith in it. Okay. So again, what are we talking about here? Then we go on and you can read all these articles and I don't know, not much of substance in terms of relevance to the article, but now we come to the specific phases. The planning. Well, the planning was done in December in 2021, 2 months before the first Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine and started with the SMO. So Jake Sullivan had a meeting with a newly formed task force, men and women from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the CIA, and the State and Treasury Department. Okay, so men and women from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. No, I wouldn't do that. And the State and Treasury Departments, why would they be involved? So too many people, too many chances of leaking of the information and the plans. And then it was supposed to be a secure room on the top floor of the old executive office building, adjacent to the White House. Now that is supposed to count as detailed information. Well, yes. Well, okay. So there's another building to the White House, and that you can make it up if you want to. That doesn't mean much, in my opinion. So they held it in the room next to the White House. Could have maybe even in somewhere else, but be patient. There's a lot of the loops are becoming now. The holes in the story are becoming now. What became clear to the participants, according to the source with direct knowledge of the process, is that Sullivan intended for the group to come up with a plan for the destruction of the two Nord Stream pipelines. And that he was delivering on the desires of the president. That means the president wanted it. And here we have the gang, Newland, Lincoln, and Sullivan. And again, here we have it again. This is not kiddie stuff, the source said. If the attack were traceable to the United States, it's an act of war. So until now, we have only talked about secrecy. And they used the special divers from the Navy in order for them not to report the story to Congress or important members of that. Treasury, why they brought the Treasury, I don't know. They're not really relevant because the CIA and these guys have special accounts, untraceable accounts for operations like this to fund it. So there's no really a reason for that. So, no. And then we have constant statement that the attack was traceable to the United States. It's an act of war. In any case, so they plan ahead. Now, the next few weeks, members of the CIA working group began to craft a plan for a covert operation that would use deep-sea divers to trigger an explosion along the pipeline. Okay, now we have the CIA involved, and they are now working with the Navy. And then we have again some irrelevant information and so forth, and what is skeptical, and yes, okay. And then he said that came next was stunning. On February the 7th, less than 3 weeks before the seemingly inevitable Russian invasion of Ukraine, Biden met in his White House office with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who after some wobbling was now firmly on the American team. And then he says, the final says, if Russia invades, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. Oh. So Biden talks to Olaf Scholz, and then right afterwards, he says, well, no more Nord Stream 2 pipelines. And then Olaf Scholz just stands there, weebly, feebly, or whatever you want to call it, and yeah, yes. And then here, 3 days earlier, Undersecretary of Newland has delivered essentially the same message with a little press coverage. I want to be very clear to you today, she said in response to a question. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward. So now we have the two main actors clearly stating that Nord Stream 2 pipeline won't go forward. And based on these two statements, it's again credible information or support of the narrative. It says basically, yes, but Biden and Newland said they will destroy it. So now they must have destroyed it. Well, saying things like that doesn't mean they have done it. How many people have said, I will kill you, but they never kill you? Words are easy, actions are tough. So just because they said it doesn't mean that they are the logical culprits. And if something looks too logical, then they always tell, but they were framed. Isn't that how the movies usually go? If the evidence is too clear, then they should be already suspect. because it too clearly shows to the culprit, the assigned culprit. So here it says, Biden's and Nuland's indiscretion created an opportunity. The CIA determined that blowing up the pipelines no longer could be considered a covert option because the president just announced that we knew how to do it. The plan to blow up Nord Stream 1 and 2 was suddenly downgraded from a covert operation requiring that Congress be informed to one that was deemed as a highly classified intelligence operation with U.S. military support. No, just because they say it doesn't mean anything. And then also he said that an covert operation requiring that of Congress had to be informed. I thought that was the whole point why the Navy divers were used. Because if they used them, then they didn't need to inform the Congress. And then a little bit later it says all they had to do now just do it. But it still had to be a secret. No, this is a story that doesn't make sense. It doesn't work out. You either are covert in discretion because at the end of the day, you want to have deniability, plausible deniability. And the fact that Biden has said it, you would say, no, but I just said it. Well, just for inner sakes. So what was blown up? Just remember, it is the two Nord Stream 1 pipelines. They were destroyed. And only one Nord Stream 2 pipeline was destroyed. So if it was Biden, then they should have blown up only according to what he said. Because you are accepting what he has said as a fact, and he's guilty and he blew up the pipelines, then technically he only was allowed to blow up Nord Stream 2 pipeline, not the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. Because he never said that he will do that. He only said Nord Stream 2 pipeline. But that's not what happened. They destroyed both Nord Stream 1 and one Nord Stream 2. So something here doesn't gel. Then the thing doesn't work out. Now here we come to a little bit more interesting. So now we're going to heading to the operation. And the first thing that is in this paragraph, it says, Norway was the perfect place to base the mission. And then they talk about Norway a little bit and what they have done there. And now that they have basically got to involve Norway, the Norwegian government and the Norwegian Navy in assisting with this operation. So again, there goes clandestine operation, poof, out the front door. No more covert operation, no more top secret operation. That's it. Inform another government and another Navy. And then, okay, they have delivered. Okay, now I'm going to talk about that later. So they back in the mission, they gonna use they decided to use the Norway. So in actually the planners knew they had to go to Norway. I thought they're gonna do it part of the Baltic 22 operation. Top. Okay. So they hated the Russians, and the Norwegian Navy was full of superb sailors and divers who had generations of experience in highly profitable deep-sea oil and gas explorations. Okay, this sentence is irrelevant because they were going to use American divers. So why would they even talk about the Norwegian divers? But just for India's sake, in my previous videos I always said, it's not only the American divers that are the superhero, special type capability people. The gas and oil divers are much more experienced than any of the military divers, because that is what they do their whole life. They are diving in deep, deep seas on these gas and oil platforms. So this is actually a type of acknowledgement what I have said all the time. And it says the Norwegian may have had other interests as well. The destruction of the Nord Stream if the Americans could pull it off, would allow Norway to sell vastly more of its own natural gas to Europe. Yes, this is the theory. This is the narrative that usually goes around. But there is a guy who has actually, let me see if I can click the right tab. Yeah, Oliver Alexander. He has made a significant study on the Seymour Hersh article, and in one of his articles, he said that he shows a graph that the Norway export of gas to Europe and so on has remained constant even after the blow up of the Nord Stream pipelines, number one. And number two is that at the stage of the explosions, or not before that actually, Germany and so on put sanctions into against the gas, and they didn't want to import it, so they had to get somewhere else. And they were asking Norway to increase the gas flow to Germany, and Norway said they couldn't do it because they are running at capacity, maximum capacity. So no, it didn't benefit Norwegians itself. So there is no commercial interest for Norway to blow up the pipelines. So it's not something that should be said. And then the Norwegian Navy was quick to find the right spot in the shallow waters of the Baltic Sea, a few miles off Denmark's Bornholm Island. The pipelines ran more than a mile apart along a seafloor that was only 260 feet deep. That's about 80 meters. Now, firstly, that's not the only place where it is shallow, and it's not the shallowest place in that where the pipeline goes. But even the Russians knew where the pipeline was, so they would have known where the most possible attack would be on a pipeline. So they would have observed these places, so via satellite and so on, or other means. I don't know what other means they have, but it's not an area that is sort of in the middle of nowhere where nobody will watch you. In any case, that would be well within the range of the divers who, operating from a Norwegian Alta-class mine hunter, would dive with a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium streaming from their tanks and plant shaped C4 charges on the 4 pipelines with concrete protective covers. That is the plan. So this guy, the same guy, I forgot his name again. Oliver Alexander. Remember that name. Hey. So he again found some articles about, number one is that he traced all the Alta class mine hunters, and during the period where this delivery of the explosives should have happened, they were all moored, they were not in that region. Then he talked about another type of mine hunter called the Oxy class, which did take part in the exercise. And he's also said that the 2 classes of ships were very similar, but not identical. But that's not supposed. This is supposed to be an inside information, supposed to be true. So if the Alta class mine hunter wasn't used and was stationary and anchored in the harbor, wherever it was, which harbor it was, and not taking part in it, then this information is wrong. It doesn't matter if the Alta class is confused with the Oxy class mine hunter. That's wrong. In any case, so then we go further on. We talk about the C4 charges on the 4 pipelines with concrete protective covers. Now, I'm going to talk about in the next video about this whole concrete stories and the C4 and the explosive used and etc. So I'm not going to cover it now. But it would be tedious and time-consuming and dangerous work. But the waters of Bornholm had another advantage. There were no major tidal currents. And that is true. If you watch the first videos that were made public about explosions, that was launched by a researcher with a PhD. They were testing the small little drone, and it was taking nice pictures, and you can see the drone was quite stable, wasn't moved a lot wrong, so there wasn't there were actually no currents in that region. And actually they show us a map and so on. And after a bit of research, Americans were all in. At this point, the Navy obscure diving group in Panama once again came into play. Okay, so they're going to use the Navy's guys. And the deep sea schools of Panama cities, whose trainees participated in Ivy Bells, are seen as an unwanted backwater by the elite graduates of the Naval Academy in Naples. What does that mean to me? But it seems to me that they are the best, but they are looked upon by the Naval Academy. So, okay, all right, that's all superficial information. So they say in this, the best divers with deep diving qualifications are a tight community, and only the very best are recruited for the operations and told to be prepared to be summoned to the CIA in Washington. Okay, so they were the best doing 80-meter diving, which is not supposed to be much. There are many civilians who dived a lot deeper than that. So now we have Denmark. But there was another concern. Any unusual underwater activity in the waters of Bornholm might draw the attention of the Swedish or Danish navies, which could report it. Denmark had also been one of the original NATO signatories and was known in the intelligence community for its special ties to the United Kingdom. Sweden had applied for membership in NATO. And that demonstrated its great skill in managing its underwater sound and magnetic sensor system that successfully tracked the Russian submarines that would occasionally show up in the remote waters of the Swedish archipelago and be forced to the surface. Okay, firstly, why mention this? It's not really important. And secondly, no, Sweden is not a great skill in managing its underwater sound and magnetic sensors in order to track Russian submarines. Those submarines have been ghosts. They have never found these ghosts. And after years and years and years of searching for these supposedly Russian submarines, they found it was a school of herring. So this is the biggest crap story you can ever find. But it's not a conspiracy. You can look it up. All right, so the Norwegians joined the Americans, insisting that some senior officers in Denmark and Sweden had to be briefed in general terms about possible diving activity in the area. And here we go again. No more secrecy. More people start to know about this. Why? You don't do things like that. Well, there is some story about what they were told and what they knew were purposely different, so you can put some stories in there, but again, why notify people and make them aware of that? Once you make them aware of it, then they learn to look twice. And the Norwegians were key to solving other hurdles. The Russian Navy was known to possess surveillance technology capable of spotting and triggering underwater mines. American explosive devices needed to be camouflaged in a way that would make them appear to be Russian systems as part of the natural background, something that required adapting to the specific salinity of the water. The Norwegians had a fix. But what does the specific salinity of the water have to do with camouflage? That means how much salt and how salty is the seawater in that region. And the Russians had some, but just for intersakes. During the Baltop's 22 exercise, it was shadowed by 2 Russian corvettes. And they were spotted off the coast of Sweden near Stockholm one day after NATO and Allied ships departed for the at sea portion. So they were Russian corvettes, 2 of them, watching the operations. And now you want to tell me you're going to do a covert operation under their noses? Come on, people. That doesn't make sense. And the Norwegians also had a solution to the crucial question of when the operation should take place. And then they talked about the past 21 years, the American Sixth Fleet held major NATO exercise on the Baltic Sea. And that is where they decided to use the Baltic 22. And that would be the ideal cover to plant the mines. Yo. And a sea event would be held off the coast of Bornholm Island and involve NATO teams of divers planting mines with competing teams using the latest underwater technology to find and destroy them. And so that is why they're going to use them. And planners and researchers had to convince the Sixth Fleet planners to add the research and development exercise to the program. So now they have to convince the Sixth Fleet. Again, more people know about it. It was both a useful exercise and an ingenious cover. The Panama boys would do their thing, and the C4 explosive would be in place by the end of the Baltops 22, with a 4-hour timer attached. So everything is in place. They're going to do it now. And I don't know what to say about this story. It sounds really like fiction, like a real thriller, spy thriller. Because, I don't know, they were doing these exercises each year, mining and demining and so forth in that region. It's not something new. The Russians were aware of that. So why even convince and again tell the leaders of the Sixth Fleet, tell more people. That's right. Isn't that how we learn when we watch these spy thrillers? You see how everybody's informed. There's no such words as on a need-to-know basis type of thing. No. That period in the movie we usually ignore. But then apparently the Washington had second thoughts and said that the 2 days was too little, and now it had to be extended and detonated a couple of days or a couple of weeks later on. So no more instant dinners. And according to this, blow the pipeline later on command. Okay, the Panama City divers had repeatedly practiced planting the C4 on pipelines as they would during Baltops. Another team in Norway had to come up with a way to give Biden what he wanted: the ability to issue a successful execution order at the time of the shooting. Then we have some more stories about irrelevant 1970s stuff. And I really don't know. But here we come to the interesting part. The C4 attached to the pipelines will be triggered by a sonar buoy dropped by a plane on short notice. But the procedure involved the most advanced signal processing technology. Once in place, the delayed timing device attached to any of the 4 pipelines would be accidentally triggered by the complex mix of ocean background noise throughout the heavily trafficked Baltic Sea, from near and distant ships, underwater drilling, seismic events, waves, and even sea creatures. To avoid this, the sonar buoy, once in place, would emit a sequence of unique low frequencies, tonal sounds, much like those emitted by a flute or a piano, that would be recognized by the timing device, and after preset hours of delay, trigger the explosives. Now let me clearly state this. This is the biggest lot of bollocks that you can actually find. This is not new technology. This is old, true, and tested technologies used by oil rigs and gas rigs to activate closing valves over distances of up to 5 kilometers. So they have used these technologies for years. So nothing is critical. Nothing can be activated by animals, sea creatures, seismic events, and whatever bullshit these people are talking. So this is totally crap. And then one also has to think about this. So you have a C4 with a timer or unit on top of that, which you have supposedly to have to hide. Then this has to operate and sample every sound continuously for what? Estimate 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. So how much battery are you going to give these units? Because this is not that the unit can go into a sleep mode and wake up like a LOT, Internet of Things type of thing. No, it has to constantly monitor any noise and see if it finds the necessary sequence. So there's constant processing, constant power. So how much batteries you're going to use? Right, so we have this. The longer the explosives are in the water, the greater risk there would be of a random signal that would launch the bombs. Yeah, okay. Part of the previous crap. And then it says, on September 26, 2022, a Norwegian Navy P-8 surveillance plane made a seemingly routine flight and dropped the sonar buoy. The signal spread underwater initially to Nord Stream 2 and then on to Nord Stream 1. 4 hours later, the highly powered C4 explosives were triggered and 3 of the 4 pipelines were put out of commission. And no, that is also wrong. Because our friend Oliver has received information from another person that, firstly, the Norwegians have this Navy P-8 surveillance plane. It was delivered by the Americans, but it wasn't operational at that time, number one. And number two is that the P-8s were scheduled and earmarked to be used in the north of Norway, more than 1,000 kilometers away from the explosion points. And secondly, they could trace each of these aircrafts due to the responders, whatever, and track them with the on the internet. You can track these things. And there was no P-8 flying in that direction or over the sea at any of these locations at the time of the supposed explosions. So there couldn't be a sonar buoy casually dropped from an aircraft. One could otherwise, why not use a small yacht to drop the sonar buoy? Wouldn't that be a lot less conspicuous? But in any case, so that is the story peddled by Seymour Hersh. Okay, well, we all know what happened after the explosion. Not much was said in the Western media except blaming Russia. Russia did it to themselves, but then found out that, like I always said, this is not a catastrophic event. The pipelines can be repaired. And as I always state is that only 3 were damaged. The 4th one, in my opinion, was intentionally left intact. So at least Germany can get some pipeline, and it would be like a consolation prize. Yeah, so Olaf said, hey, okay, we destroyed 3 of your pipelines. The first 2 were in any case old and small and so on. So we only destroyed, and they had no turbines, so don't worry about them, but you still have the one Nord Stream pipeline, which has the necessary turbines to pump you the gas. So if you ever need it, don't worry, there's a backdoor. But in any case, so a few months later, when it merged with Russia, the authorities repaired the pipeline. New York described the news as complicating theories about who was behind the attack. Yeah, when they say they can repair, and suddenly, well, credibility that they have done it, the Russians have done it to themselves, started to evaporate. But as we also know, Blinken described the moment as a potential good one. And more recently, Victoria and Newland expressed satisfaction at the demise of the newest of the pipelines. Well, there's only one of them. Wara. And that's the end of the article. And I'm sorry to say, there's nothing, how much is this really of value and how much detail is really relevant to it? And the detail that was actually provided can be proven and double-checked and verified and found to be wrong. That is how it is. So, let me look at some other stuff that I've made notes of. Well, one was the clandestine secret operation that was never part of it. Russians knew where the vulnerabilities were of the pipeline. The Baltop's 2 exercises were shadowed by the 2 Russian corvettes. According to Hersh, the divers operated from a Norwegian Alta-class mine hunter, which was not at that stage anywhere near it and anchored in the harbors at their berth. And so no Alta-class minesweeper ever took part in the Baltop S-22, only the Oxy-class mine hunter, and it did go in that vicinity around, but from the tracking data, you could see it couldn't drop any divers and pick them up later because they were always traveling at certain speed. Then also the expeditionary attachment of the US Navy ship, led by the Universal Amphibious Assault Ship USS Kearsarge, was in the Baltic Sea. But the nearest the Kearsarge ever came was about between 30 kilometers from Nord Stream 1 and 50 kilometers from the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. So they couldn't do it either. And if you look at the whistleblower and so on, well, the whistleblower said that they arrived by helicopter. But the Alta class or the Oxoy class don't have any helipads. So this sailor couldn't be on one of those ships as claimed by Seymour Hersh. And the only one is the Kearsarge, but the Kearsarge was never in the vicinity of these explosive locations. So again, and Seymour Hersh doesn't mention the Kearsarge. So the problem here is that, Seymour Hersh is a fairly old investigative reporter. That means he's old school. And I don't question his capabilities. But old people are usually not too clued up with modern technology. And basically, how to track stuff. And apparently Joe Galvin used the open source AIS data to track what the hell is that thing? The Oxford class marine hunter, during the Baltops 22. And there's a map for how he traveled. And the movements of this mine hunter was not consistent with the 3 lengthy dives at the locations of the 3 separate blasts. So Hersh didn't know about this technology, but others could do it. And that means that they could verify whatever statements he made. The same is basically for the PA aircraft. And although Hersh states that the charges would be detonated by a sonar buoy, dropped by this Norwegian Navy P-8, yes, he's correct. The aircrafts were delivered to Norway, but they were not flying. They were not operational at that stage. So the question is, with a little bit of check, he might have found it out. But did he do the effort, or did his search just didn't bring up anything? And then again, open source ADS/B exchange information also does not show any Norwegian P-8 activity on the September 26th. So again, I don't think that Hersh knew about this type of capability or technology that you can easily access and verify the locations of boats, ships, and aircrafts. Okay, then we talked about the activation The sonar signals that were so sensitive now, it's old tech. Nothing new, nothing funny, etc. So as you can see, there are a lot of other points that I really didn't cover and so on. But go read the article. Go see if you find out if you like the story and so on, because it sounds real. The problem is that they also say that Seymour Hersh contains a lot of information. Well, you can take that info. In my opinion, there's not that much information, but the information that was provided can be verified, and it is found that that information is wrong. That's a problem. The more information you provide, the more information can be verified, and the more can your story be debunked. That is, unfortunately, the mistake that Seymour Hersh has made. And none of the, this is not the only articles that I've read and so on, and even my own thoughts. It's, for me, the biggest thing was clandestine operation. Secrecy was of paramount. And it was because if it was ever found out that America has done it, it was an act of war, and it will lead to a lot of other consequences, that other nations will also perform international terrorist acts. And there are a lot of Norwegian pipelines and other pipelines lying underground and cables and so on that can be blown up by the Russians if they wanted to, or by China, or by anybody else. And diving 80 meters deep is not a critical thing. It's nothing special. In any case, I think I've said my story for today. I will, in my part 2, I will talk about the current narrative promoted by the Western about the yacht that has been used by some Ukrainians in order to... And again, everybody pro-Russian just dismisses out of the story out of hand without providing any facts or any reason to do that. But they all accept Seymour Hersh's story because it sounds nice. You know, it sounds like a thriller. But it's now been proven to be or being debunked. So, until next time then. Cheers.